They can't hold me down, pushing my face to the ground. I got my feet planted deep, my heart for the beat, I will not see defeat. Or you think I'm giving up now? I'm going high as the clouds. Just get my feet off the floor. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Roar. Ain't going down without a fight. Go ahead, let them know. You gotta go ahead, let them know. Go hard, you champions, take flight. Go ahead, let them know. Go ahead, let them know. Ain't going down without a fight. Go ahead, let them know. You gotta go ahead, let them know. Don't let them tell you no lies. Keep your head up, passing by. You know what you can endure. Never think less of what you are here for. Go ahead, give it a try. You know just as well as I do we fly. Go ahead, give them some more. Just when you think there's a left, give a roar. You gotta let them know. You gotta let them know. You gotta let it go. You gotta let it roll. You gotta let them know. You gotta let them know. You gotta let it go. You gotta let them roll. Ain't going down without a fight. Go ahead, let them know. You gotta go ahead, let them know. Go hard, you champions, take flight. Go ahead, let them know. You gotta let them know. You gotta let it go. You gotta let them roll.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to 2022 Pac-12 Women's Basketball Media Day. To lead us off, I'd like to welcome Commissioner George Kliavkoff for some opening remarks.
Thank you, John, and welcome to our 2022 Pac-12 Women's Basketball Media Day. I'd like to first recognize and thank our student athletes and coaches for being here today to represent their schools and the Pac-12 Conference. I'd also like to thank our media partners, sponsors, and of course, all of our attending press members, without whom we could not showcase and support Pac-12 women's basketball and our student athletes. Our conference continues to invest in women's basketball, and we continue to expect great results, including tournament bids, Final Fours, and national championships. In a few minutes, Teresa Gould, our Deputy Commissioner and Head of Women's Basketball, will explain why we are so optimistic and excited about this season and about the future of Pac-12 women's basketball. I'll focus my allotted time on some broader issues related to the Pac-12 and college athletics. There has been more change in college athletics during my first 15 months on the job than anyone could have anticipated. But despite the rapidly changing environment, I remain optimistic about the future of college sports. The truth is that college sports has been in desperate need of change. While it's not ideal to have that change thrust upon us by external forces, the result, in my view, will be a better and stronger college sports landscape. NIL has been a very positive development, for the first time allowing our student athletes to enjoy the same opportunities as all other students to monetize their brands and talents. There is work to be done to ensure that we have a single set of NIL rules that are equally enforced across the country. But despite some early abuses, NIL itself is a huge net positive for college sports. While we don't yet know where the NCAA transformation process will land, I believe we are on the right path to restructure the oversight of college athletics. I believe that part of the outcome will be to allow similarly situated universities and conferences to have more control over our destinies and much better positioned to support our student athletes. On the college football front, we have been strong supporters of expanding the college football playoffs to provide more access for our universities and our student athletes. And it is great news that that will soon be a reality. I know everyone continues to have interest in the current round of realignment. With respect to the Pac-12, I can tell you that our 10 schools are together, aligned, and committed to our conference. We are actively negotiating our next media rights agreements. and there is great interest in the marketplace due to the strength of our school's brands and markets. We are fortunate to be able to talk to both our incumbent partners and potential new partners in the open market, allowing us to think creatively about how to distribute our media rights starting the season after next. And we remain open to expansion that makes sense for the conference at the appropriate time. For all these reasons, we are incredibly bullish about the future growth and success of the Pac-12. I hope you all get to spend a lot of time today with our student athletes and our terrific coaches. I look forward to returning to the stage shortly to answer your questions, but first I'd like to turn it over to Teresa for a deeper dive on Pac-12 women's basketball. Please welcome Teresa Gould.
Good morning. This is like my favorite day of the year. It means women's basketball season is officially starting. Yeah, we can cheer for that. That's a good thing. I too want to thank our student athletes and coaches for taking time away from campus to be here today, along with our partners and, of course, the members of the media. I appreciate so much the coverage that you all provide Pac-12 women's basketball. You're an important part of the Pac-12 women's basketball family, and your presence here today means a lot. Please know your passion and interest in our women's basketball programs does not go unnoticed. Nothing inspires me more than spending time with our extraordinary student athletes and learning about their stories. And I'm excited that all of you will have the opportunity to get to know them throughout the day as well. As we prepare to tip off another season, I continue to be in awe of the accomplishments of our coaches and student athletes in this league. Year in and year out, by just about any metric, the Pac-12 has established itself as the best women's basketball conference in the country. Over the past 7 seasons, Pac-12 women's basketball leads all conferences in Final Four appearances, non-conference winning percentage, NCAA tournament wins, NCAA tournament winning percentage, and WBCA All-Americans. Stanford's appearance in the national semifinals last season was the 20th for the conference all time. And of those 20 Final Four appearances, more than 1/3 have come in just the past 6 NCAA tournaments. Going back even further, the Pac-12 also leads all conferences in Final Four appearances since 2012-2013 with 9. Those 9 appearances have been spread across 6 different Pac-12 programs, which is 2 more than any other conference. Simply put, in an amazing display of depth, half of the Pac-12 has appeared in a Final Four in the past 9 NCAA tournaments. 6 Pac-12 teams earned NCAA tournament berths in 2022, the 5th consecutive postseason to feature at least half of our league. And at least 5 conference programs have earned bids in 8 consecutive NCAA tournaments. As you all are aware, the 2021-2022 season was the second year using the NCAA evaluation tool, the NET, as we call it, for women's basketball, and every one of our 12 teams finished in the top 100, including 8 in the top 50. Additionally, the Pac-12 was one of only 2 leagues that had all of its teams in the top 100, further demonstrating the depth we have in this league and the ongoing investment in our programs. But as much as I love bragging about past success, we're here today to look forward to the 2022-2023 season, and I can tell you that Pac-12 women's basketball shows no signs of slowing down, with our programs having attracted the nation's top prep talent and record-setting 2022 recruiting classes. Pac-12 programs signed 23 student athletes from the 2022 ESPNW Hoop Girls top 100 who arrived on our campuses this fall, including 7 of the top 10 prospects. 6 of the nation's top 14 classes were put together by Pac-12 programs, including each of the top 3 and 5 of the top 8. In available data going back a dozen years, no conference has finished a recruiting cycle with as many programs boasting top 10 classes. Pac-12 programs also signed 3 top 10 classes in each of the previous 3 years, totals which led or tied for the national lead in each recruiting cycle. Of the 24 women selected to play in the 2022 McDonald's All-American game, a national best 11 are on Pac-12 rosters this season. The Pac-12 continues to be a destination for the nation's brightest and best, and a place where student athletes can have it all. They can compete for NCAA championships, get a world-class education, and engage in campus and community life in ways that allows them to meet their full potential athletically, academically, and personally. Not only do the nation's best high school players choose to attend Pac-12 institutions, but we have a tremendous track record of positioning them for success during their time on Pac-12 campuses. Since 2015-2016, the Pac-12 leads all conferences with 15 WBCA All-Americans. Our conference has had multiple WBCA All-Americans for 4 consecutive seasons and 6 times in the past 7 years. We also boast an NCAA high 18 USBWA first, second, and third team All-Americans since 2015-2016. And post-college, the Pac-12 has had multiple first-round WNBA draft selections in each of the past 6 drafts, an active streak that leads all leagues by more than 3 years. And finally, 3 of the past 6 Wade Trophy winners have been from the Pac-12. The Pac-12's success has been guided by an incredible roster of trailblazing coaches who are among the brightest minds in the game. Not only does the conference boast the winningest coach in the history of women's college basketball in Stanford's Tara Vanderveer, but we also have 3 of the 35 winningest active Division I coaches by win percentage, a total tied for the most among Power 5 leagues. And 5 of our head coaches have led a team to the Final Four. In addition to their success on the court, this extraordinary group of coaches provide leadership off the court as well. They serve in positions of influence with the NCAA and WBCA to grow the game. They advocate for gender equity. They promote social justice and civic engagement and champion women in coaching. The commitment of our coaches to use their platforms to take on the important issues of our time inspires me every day. At the conference level, I was recently able to add 2 highly respected veterans within college athletics to my team, both of whom have extensive backgrounds in women's basketball. Rhonda Lundin Bennett, who chaired the NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Committee in 2018 and 2019, began at the Pac-12 last month as our Associate Commissioner for Women's Basketball. Rhonda will spearhead the conference's strategic planning efforts to elevate, advance, and grow our women's basketball brand. Lisa Peterson started at the Pac-12 just last week as Senior Associate Commissioner for Sport Management and will be responsible for the comprehensive oversight of our 21 Olympic sports. We were thrilled that just last week, Lisa was named the current chair of the NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Committee, an incredible recognition of her expertise in women's basketball. Both Rhonda and Lisa are nationally respected leaders who are passionate about women's basketball and growing the game. I truly feel like I have assembled a bit of a dream team right here at the Pac-12 and look forward to partnering with them to enhance the service to our membership and employ the strategic thinking around women's basketball that will take our league to unprecedented heights. I'd like to take a quick moment to touch on the upcoming season's coverage of Pac-12 women's basketball, including a couple of really important highlights to our schedule. This season, a record number of broadcasts will air on the Pac-12 networks, 132 games, supported by enhanced studio programming during pregame, halftime, and postgame during league play. In addition, another 6 broadcasts will air on the ESPN family of networks. 2 Pac-12 home games will air on ABC, including the blockbuster South Carolina at Stanford game on November 20th, wrong date, November 20th, which of course features the past 2 NCAA national champions. One of the highlights of the regular season that I am most excited about will be the inaugural edition of the Pac-12 SWAC Legacy Series, featuring 6 women's games alongside 6 men's games. The series represents a first-of-its-kind partnership between a Power 5 and HBCU conference with the goal of creating a forum for competition as well as meaningful educational opportunities for our coaches and student athletes in the critically important area of social justice. The name of the series is tied to a collaboration with the Equal Justice Initiative's Legacy Museum, and the series itself was born out of this summer's Pac-12 Impact trip to Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. The trip, which included 2 women's basketball student athletes, journeyed to the center of the civil rights movement and visited the Equal Justice Initiative Museum, among many other historic sites. I was fortunate to have made the trip myself to Selma and Montgomery with our student athletes and can honestly say that the experience was life-changing for everyone in attendance. I believe the partnership with the SWAC will also provide an unforgettable opportunity to learn more about our HBCU institutions and to use the positive impact of those learnings to build a better society for all. The regular season will once again conclude with our Pac-12 women's basketball tournament in Las Vegas, which has had an incredible run at the entertainment capital of the world with thrilling contests and packed arenas. The Pac-12 networks will air the first 10 contests, the first round of the tournament through the semifinals, with the championship game again being televised on ESPN on Sunday, March 5th. And as part of our year-long celebration of the 50th anniversary of Title IX, for the first time ever, the Pac-12 Hall of Honor event will take place during the women's tournament and will include an all-female class of inductees. As you can see, there is so much to be excited about when it comes to Pac-12 women's basketball. With an immense amount of returning talent, we are well positioned to continue our success this coming season. 10 all-conference, 5 all-freshmen, 2 all-defensive honorees return for this season, including the league's Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, 6th Player of the Year, and Co-Most Improved Player of the Year. There is so much to look forward to this season, and today's activities provide a tremendous opportunity to promote our student athletes and tell their amazing stories. Before we begin the first moderated Q&A session with my dear friend and colleague, Ann Schatz, I want to take a moment to recognize Ann for having won a Northwest Emmy Award this summer in the category of Best Sports Play-by-Play or Analyst. Ann has been an outstanding play-by-play announcer for over 40 years and has been with the Pac-12 networks since our launch over a decade ago. Ann is the first woman to have ever won this particular Emmy. Ann, we are so proud to call you one of our own and are beyond appreciative of your commitment to our student athletes and to Pac-12 women's basketball. So on behalf of the Pac-12, I'm thrilled to have my friend Ann come up here today and present her with her award in recognition of her ongoing excellence in her profession. Okay.
All right, then.
We could just put this here for everybody to see
No.
it.
Give it up. That's pretty cool. Let's put this right there. Thank you.
You need your pen back.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. That was something, and it was a surprise, and it reminded me of quickly. Teresa mentioned the word Pac-12 family, and for those of us in this room who have been fortunate enough to be a part of this family for however many years, from inception, I don't care if it's the day before yesterday, it is indeed a family. And can you imagine what those producers had to do to dig around and find some kind of a highlight reel to give to the committee that was acceptable? Lord have mercy. So God bless them for digging. But let's talk about why we're here today, and that is to celebrate this conference, our women's basketball players, teams, coaches, managers, media relations directors, anyone who has anything to do with women's basketball at this conference. You are the engine, and we're going to go like hell to make sure that this year, the next couple of years are going to be like nothing else. The next couple of years are going to be like nothing else. We're going to throw the gloves off. We're going to get after it. We're going to get busy. We're going to have fun. We're going to win. We're going to support each other, and we're going to love every single second. So thanks for being here. Teresa, I'm delighted to share the stage with you, and I can't wait to bring up Rhonda and Lisa. Where? Ah, there we go. Come on. The dream team. Congratulations. Hi, baby. Thanks. Good to see you. All right. Let's get some Q&As going. Let's get some good, you got, everybody's got their mics, water bottles. Yep, water bottles, you got your water bottles? Okay, good job. Pass them around. All right, Teresa, you mentioned the success of the conference in its entirety in terms of the Power Five and the success that we have had on the floor. That's all wonderful. I would love for you all to weigh in on the success academically of our teams, our women, the coaches who are invaluable in making sure that our women understand and embrace the idea of what this education is going to do for them, in addition to their mad skills on the floor. I would love it if you guys weighed in on that.
Yeah, and Ann, I appreciate you asking that question, right? Because buried in all of those accolades of success is the student-athlete experience,
yep.
Right? And for us in this league, one of the things I've always loved about being part of the Pac-12 is the focus on our mission and the student-athlete experience and why we're here. And we are here to develop leaders for the journey after college and after women's basketball. And as I said in my comments, I've always believed that the Pac-12 provides a unique experience in that regard. Our campuses believe passionately about the holistic experience in supporting student athletes. And I would say women's basketball student athletes have been leaders in that space, right? When you look at our APR and our graduation rates and the academic performance of the young women in our programs, when you look at their community and civic engagement and what they do off the court, it's really obvious that they came to the Pac-12 and they came to their campus not just to win basketball national championships and win games and be competitive and maybe have a career in the WNBA, but they came to our league to make a difference in society. And there's so many stories, and I encourage all of you to pursue those stories today and have those conversations with our student athletes. But the academic piece is a significant part of that. And for many of these young women, women's basketball is the opportunity that is providing them that access to get that education that in many instances changes the course of their life. So we're really proud of the young women in our programs. We're proud of the way that our campuses emphasize academics and community involvement and civic engagement. And I think our women's basketball student athletes are great leaders in that space.
Lisa and Rhonda, Lisa, coming from the 11 years at the University of Oregon, the impact that you made there and echoing, I would imagine, what Teresa just said. Rhonda, the decades at, at Nevada. if you could help us understand what some of your experiences have been like to lead you to this greatness in terms of emphasis on academics.
Well, on campuses, yes, we always say that at some point their sport is going to end, whether that's when they're done with college, whether that's after they go pro, they go overseas, whatever that looks like. And so for us to be able to provide the education and the opportunities for them to be prepared whenever that season or that career ends. And so there is a lot of emphasis that gets put into student athlete development across all 12 conference institutions to show all of the things that they do need to learn and that they do need to pay attention to for when that day comes. So it is a really big emphasis. I know for the media, it's mostly just what happens on the court, but that's just a small percentage of the time that they spend with us at the institutions. And so just really excited about, what we've seen, the leaders that have come out of this league, certainly in the sport of basketball, but also beyond that. And so it is a really big emphasis, and they are students first.
Rhonda?
Yeah, and I think for me, being on campus and being able to meet those student athletes from the time that they're in high school and they're coming on their recruiting visits to when they finish their career, and being able to see what they accomplish both academically and socially. And we've just had so many women's basketball players who really truly understand their role as a student and an athlete. And I think that's really what's special about this sport, being able to see the way that they grow and change and hopefully help change the world.
Teresa, you mentioned some of the huge games that are coming up on our network and beyond this season for the Pac-12 conference in women's hoops. Any other little nuggets that any of you three would love to throw out in terms of what you're most excited about for this upcoming season? Not just the big televised games. What are those little things, maybe under the radar, where you're thinking, here's maybe not another game, but here's a moment, or here's a player, or here's an event that I'm looking forward to?
Well, I know I referenced in my comments the SWAC HBCU Legacy Series, and another event that I know, John did a great job of promoting was the Coast to Coast Challenge in Dallas in December. And I think a couple things, like the one thing that I really, really respect and appreciate about our coaches is they will play anyone, anytime. And they view that as their responsibility to the conference and to their program to play against the best, to be the best, right? So I appreciate not only the high-profile matchups that we will see on ESPN, but the ones that maybe aren't on ESPN, right? And it's not that easy out west. Not everybody is willing to travel out west and play our teams. So I appreciate their willingness to play the tough schedule. But I think the experiential part of it is what I'm most excited about. And when I think about the SWAC Legacy Series and the opportunity that it provides for our coaches and our student athletes and our support staff to experience something that hopefully will change them and motivate them to be those stewards in our community of social justice issues and to really open their minds to the HBCU campuses and the way of life, like I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, not just for our student athletes, but for those HBCU student athletes that maybe have never been on some of our campuses. So I think, look, at the end of the day, college athletics is just full of making memories, right? And those are the piece that you always remember. And I look forward to those Legacy Series matchups and just learning and hearing from those student athletes what that experience meant to them.
And when it comes to the committee, ladies, I mean, we understand all too well that strength of schedule, who you play, where you play, at what point of the season do you play, all that stuff matters when those bids are coming out, correct? I'd love for you to weigh in on the committee paying close attention to everything this conference does and beyond.
So with the net, I know it's been an adjustment because the first year that women's basketball had the net was, 2021, which was the COVID year. And there were some leagues that didn't even play outside of their league. And so it was hard for coaches to wrap their heads around how that tool works. And then last year, again, there was, a lot of contests that weren't actually completed. So I am looking forward to having a full year of, the net tool being able to help us. But all of those things matter. Where you play it, the time of the year that you play it, actually the net is what evaluates the efficiency. So how many times you score when you have the ball and how many times you stop them from scoring when they have the ball. And so all of those things matter, and playing in the big games and playing against, the other A5 conferences is very big for our institutions. at the same time, playing in that HBCU, that is something that you don't pass up on an opportunity like that. So that, will be something that is talked about. But just really excited about this league this year. I know that the polls came out and Stanford was picked to win, but anybody can win any game on any night in this league. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about Pac-12 women's basketball.
Rhonda, your history shows us how important that scheduling is and how important timing of games and results of games, correct?
Yeah, and I think that's one way where the Pac-12 schools have really excelled in figuring out which matchups they should have, and then, quite frankly, winning those non-conference matchups. I think that's really important, not just scheduling them, but winning them. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about joining the conference and being able to work closely with our women's basketball teams is just their commitment to excellence in all areas, including their non-conference scheduling and their non-conference success.
Let's talk about Las Vegas a little bit in terms of our tournament being held there again. The great success of going to that city and the trajectory of perhaps the future and it staying there. Teresa, could you start?
Yeah, well, I have to say, and I have to credit the boss in the back row for a lot of the success that we've experienced in Vegas. I will say, from day one, I mean, you all might recall when we made the move from Seattle by necessity because of the facility being renovated to Las Vegas, we weren't sure, right? The coaches weren't sure. And we landed in the entertainment capital of the world, and it has been off the charts successful from day one. Part of that is the interest in our product, right? We have a caliber of women's basketball that people want to see. People want to come to the venue and experience high caliber women's basketball. And then on top of it, you have the benefit of being in Las Vegas with all of the entertainment options and fun that exists in that city. So it's been a great experience for us, and our student athletes love being there. Our families love being there, and we get tremendous support from the Las Vegas community to make it a high quality student athlete experience. That being said, there are a lot of cities that are interested in our tournament, right? We have grown it to the point with our attendance and with our fan support that it's an event that people want. So we'll take it year by year, Ann, and see where we go from here. But we're looking forward to being in Vegas this year and having more sellout crowds and great women's basketball and a great student athlete experience.
All right, TV ratings, and that moves the needle as well. Women's basketball has never been more popular. The ratings have never been more robust. That's across the board. I would love for all three of you to chime in on the importance of the Pac-12 networks and what the networks have done, the Pac-12 networks have done in terms of elevating our game, creating more exposure for our athletes, and helping folks understand the importance and power of this conference in women's basketball. If you could all three chime in, that'd be great.
Well, just, the fact that what Teresa said earlier was that 132 games are going to be played on the network. That's incredible. And certainly, from an NCAA committee perspective, being able to see all of those games, that's what you have to do to be able to rank those teams. And so that is hugely important. But then the other thing that I really appreciate about the networks is it's not just the games, it's the storytelling around it, and where you really get to know the student athletes and you get to know their personalities and things that are outside of the game. And I think that's what draws you in, and that's how you become a fan, not just of women's basketball, but of those student athletes and of the game. So it's incredibly important.
Rhonda, you started, you were a media relations director at Arizona State, and so you understand the importance of storytelling as you rose the ranks and where you ended up at Nevada. So please help us understand the importance of these networks, the coverage, and just how we shine a light on these special women.
Yeah, I think Lisa said it best, of just the ability to tell the stories of the student athletes. It used to be that women's basketball would get a TV game here and there, but at the Pac-12 conference, like nearly every women's basketball game has that kind of exposure for fans to get to know the teams. And, as I've traveled around the country, people watch those games and they really enjoy getting to know the student athletes more on a personal level, in addition to the amazing things that they do on the court. And I just think as a former communications person, being able to have that outlet to tell your stories and to Lisa's point about the NCAA committee, when I first started on the committee in 2014, to be able to watch all those games and see the teams, I think it's helped the conference grow and continue to have that national spotlight. And it definitely helps the committee to really be able to fully evaluate the student athletes and the teams in our conference. You know, even though we play at later times or maybe aren't in those West Coast or in the East Coast primetime windows, it really helps everyone to be able to watch and see how great a product the Pac-12 Conference women's basketball is.
Do we trust that more and more eyeballs regarding the committee are on our conference? Can we trust that's happening?
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Well, Lisa will yell at them if they don't.
Exactly.
Come on.
She is the chair
No,
for the next 2
seriously,
years.
can we,
Yeah.
you guys are in the trenches.
Yes. No, there was a change for the chair that was supposed to be on the committee. She changed conferences, and so I am elevated into the chair position without having that year of training in the vice chair role, so be patient with me for the first year. But no, it's an incredible group of, it's now 12 administrators from campuses and conference offices, you know, that really are invested in women's basketball and the changing landscape of what that looks like. And they want to do everything that's possible to elevate the game of women's basketball. And so watching games, I mean, if it really was just about numbers, we wouldn't need people. You could just take the net ranking and, you know, slot them in. But it's really not about that. And so watching the games really matters, and this group is really invested in that.
Okay. Ladies, short-term, long-term goals for Pac-12 women's basketball. Go.
Well, so there's always two parts of that, and I'm always going to come back to, we have the aspirational competitive goals, and the competitive goals are about sustained excellence. And to me, sustained excellence is, you know, how many teams are we getting into postseason? How far are they advancing into the tournament? And the priority for us in recent years in regards to that sustained excellence has been depth, right? And it's been so exciting to see over the last few years a Utah, a Colorado, a Washington State, and see some of our programs that haven't had deep experience in the NCAA tournament get back to that point. So we're super proud of those programs, and I'm so appreciative of the investment from our athletic directors and our SWAs in those programs, because we need to have a league where all 12 of our programs are in the conversation, which they are, right? So I would say competitively, the goal is sustained excellence, and that year after year after year, we have, you know, the majority of our league, like we should be in a position where we're looking at 8 or 10 or everybody in our league being in on the conversation. So that's the competitive piece of it. But I would also say, Ann, like for us, we're always going to go back to that student athlete experience. And in this league, yep, we want to win national championships. We want to have every team in the NCAA tournament. We want to continue to be able to stand up here year after year and talk about all those metrics where we're dominating the country in terms of those competitive metrics. But we also have to remember what business we are in. And we're in the business of developing leaders. And so in this league, we will also always have strategic goals around community engagement, around supporting our student athletes. George talked about NIL. We have a responsibility as leaders on our campuses and in this conference to support our student athletes and develop them in that space. So I think for me, the short term and the long term is both, let's continue to make sure that we're providing a first-class student athlete experience so the Pac-12 continues to be a destination spot for the country's brightest and best. And let's make sure that that sustained excellence continues, and that next year we're not just talking about 6 teams, we're talking about 8, we're talking about 10, we're talking about 12. Everybody's getting out of the first and second round, and we have multiple teams vying for national championships.
Love that. Lisa?
Well, that was very well said. I'm not sure that I can go off of that. But no, when you look at women's basketball, and the reason why those student athletes, they come to the institutions in our conference is for that academic and that social side of things, but also for the basketball excellence. And look at the WNBA and look at the number of players that the Pac-12 has in the WNBA, and Kelsey Plum, our alum, you know, winning that title this year, and just all of those things. Like, that's what attracts the best and the brightest to conferences like that, is because then they can see themselves in that path going forward. And that's what I hope that we continue to do, is to provide that path. Yes, NIL is a part of that, all of the things that tie into that, but that this becomes, I know that if I go there and I put in the work, that this is what my future is going to be.
All right, Rhonda, we're gonna bring this train to the station with you. Oregonian, native of Hillsborough, correct? Okay. Got your start at Arizona State, one of your foundational pieces in terms of this business at Arizona State. So grew up in Pac-10, Pac-12 country, if you will, and then the decade served at Nevada. So coming back to the Pac-12, if you will, goals, short and long term, what are you seeing?
Well, I think being able to provide that excellence and that support to our student athletes, our coaches, and our programs is my main short-term goal. We're doing such great things on our campuses, and being able to provide that support to help them continue those things, supporting the initiatives that the Pac-12 is doing, like the SWAC, Pac-12 Legacy Series, and other educational initiatives, really providing great support to our campuses and our coaches and our student athletes in that regard. And then for me, it's kind of a cool bookend to have been at Arizona State in the late 90s, early 2000s, and to mostly be a part of the commitment to excellence that the Pac-12 has had, and really being able to elevate our women's basketball programs, and then being able to join the conference and be able to support what's already happened in all the championships and excellence that we already have, but also help grow and elevate that brand and do what I can to help support that.
I'll tell you what, Teresa, you're right about the dream team. Well done. This is a trifecta up here. Yeah. Thanks. Welcome, obviously, to the administrative roles here at the conference and with the networks, and we're delighted to have you with us. Teresa, keep doing what you're doing, baby. Keep doing what you're doing.
Don't forget your Emmy.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. All right, we're moving along. I'm abdicating the stage, and Johnny, you're up next. And can I just leave the mic here?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna excuse
you.
you.
That's right, George. I was kind of nervous, so it's all. Yeah. Good to see you, man. Thanks. There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ann.
Don't forget.
We're going to open it up now for media questions. Please raise your hand. We have a couple of mic runners on both sides, Sarah and Carrie. Please state your name and affiliation before you ask a question. And also, because we have said Dream Team up here, please direct your question to whom you'd like to answer it and not leave it open-ended. So we'll start with Ann here on the left, and then Cindy next over there on the right.
Thank you. Ann Killian with the San Francisco Chronicle. This is for Teresa and George. Teresa, you just went over how wonderful the Pac-12 is for women's basketball, what a powerhouse it is. You have two historically great programs that are scheduled to leave in 2 years. And I'm just wondering if both of you could address that issue that's going to loom over the next 2 seasons, and also the fact that certain decisions in college sports seem to be made solely with football in mind and are hurting women's sports powerhouse conferences.
Hi, Ann. Thank you for being here. Obviously, the USC-UCLA decision is disappointing, right? For those of you in the room who know me, I've been in this league for almost 20 years, so it is disappointing that an association and a tradition of this magnitude is going away. That being said, it is our role, my role, George's role, for all of us that work in the conference to forge a path forward that is positive for this conference and for these student athletes. So 2 things that we've been laser focused on. One of them is that during this time of transition between now and 2024, we are still here to serve 7,000 student athletes. And that includes the student athletes from USC and UCLA. So we are working really hard to make sure that during this time of transition and uncertainty, that all of our student athletes are supported and that the student athletes from those institutions don't see a change. The second thing, and I know George touched upon this, is we are laser focused on what does our future look like, right? We have to move forward, and we have an obligation to the remaining 10 institutions and those remaining student athletes to move forward with a conference that affords them the opportunity to do all the things that they came to the Pac-12 to do. So that is very much our focus, and we feel great about the 10 remaining institutions that we have in our conference, particularly in the women's basketball space, given the success that we've had with those remaining 10. and we'll continue to look to the future to build a conference that serves the needs of our student athletes, including an elite, high-caliber women's basketball conference.
I would agree with everything Teresa said. I would, yeah, she does make it easy. I would add that, I lament the fact that there are some decisions being made for apparent short-term financial gains. I'm not even sure there is financial gains, but that undoubtedly is the reason why those decisions were made. And that's unfortunate. And it may be okay for football athletes who have to travel a very few times across the country, but I really, really worry about the student athletes in all of our other sports who will have to travel, miss academic days on campus, put their bodies through the stress of going across multiple time zones to play conference games. We're very focused, as Teresa said, on our 10 and on kind of making sure that we have our media rights and other deals in place that allow us to have the opportunity to expand if we want. In the very short term, after we get through next season, we will have to, if we don't expand, focus on how to pick up through scheduling some top-tier games to replace the games that our teams are going to miss against UCLA and USC.
Cindy?
Cindy Brunson, Pac-12 Network. Teresa, this question is for you. You mentioned other cities interested in hosting the women's basketball tournament. Seattle, with its new Climate Pledge Arena, led the attendance in WNBA action this season and is a set site for regional coverage in the NCAA tournament. So is Seattle one of the cities, and who else is interested?
Yeah, there are multiple cities up and down the Pac-12 footprint, as you can imagine, Cindy, like all of the same cities that have put in bids for NCAA rounds, whether it's Seattle or Portland or Phoenix or Sacramento. I mean, there are a number of cities in the West that I think would love to have a conversation about the Pac-12 tournament. We're at a point right now where we're, kind of evaluating what's best in both the short term and the long term. And with a lot of uncertainty on this horizon, I don't think we're going to move swiftly with any significant moves, but there is a lot of interest, and that's a real testament to our programs and our staff who have built a product that our community really wants. But to answer your question, many of the cities that have also bid for NCAA rounds are the same cities that have expressed interest in our tournament.
Michelle?
Yeah, this question is for George. On an NCAA level, what kind of counsel are you getting from the NCAA regarding the Dobbs decision and our female student athletes in states in particular, I would say Arizona and Utah, naming where there are abortion bans now in place or going to be in place in terms of those rights? I know there have been stories being written about how there's not a lot of guidance right now for schools on how to handle female student athletes in situations around the abortion issue, and I'm wondering what the NCAA is telling you all about what's going to happen.
I haven't had a single conversation with the NCAA about that.
Pass it right down to Alex here. Sorry, right here with Alex. Sorry.
Alex Simon from Bay Area News Group. George, you mentioned media rights just a couple of questions ago, and in particular with women's basketball, it seems across the board, NCAA level, WNBA level, even in the FIBA World Cup, we saw a huge number of people tune in at 11 o'clock West Coast time, let alone 2 in the morning. And for a while, it seems as if the Pac-12 has had their own network do a lot, and the ESPN growth in terms of games on the network has stagnated. As you guys kind of look at this opportunity in 2 years to have a new deal, how much do you need to be focused on women's basketball as a potential spot for you guys to kind of have a massive growth of potential revenue opportunities and game inventory and game volume for your new deal?
I think women's basketball is our fastest growing television sport. Ratings are increasing faster than any other sport, and I think it's one of the sports that has been undervalued traditionally in media rights. I think that provides a great opportunity. I will tell you, as we're in the open market, as we're talking to all of the potential distributors, they want to talk about women's basketball. They want to talk about how to highlight our women's basketball programs. They understand the quality of our programs, and they understand, more importantly, the ratings that it'll draw for them.
And especially because of the fact that at the NCAA level, there's been the report that's out that they may have undervalued the women's basketball tournament alone by almost, if not more than $100 million. Does that, to you, as somebody negotiating that with some of the top programs in the country, maybe kind of raise the light bulb of, we could really sell our programs up in that way? Like, how much is this an opportunity for this conference and these 10 schools that are going to be here to capitalize on this moment?
Yeah, it's a huge part of what's going to drive our media value, which I think we're going to be very proud of when we're done with our deals.
Bruce over there on the right.
Hi, George. Just following up on that. When you talk about it, I mean, the narrative has been football, 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 football. As far as the media rights, how much does it come up in conversation about what you're talking about with the women and men's basketball for that reason?
There's not a single distributor that we've talked to about our media rights that has only been interested in football. They're interested in all of our rights, but it's driven by football, men's and women's basketball, and then our great success in Olympic sports. So we talk about women's basketball with every single potential media distributor.
Michelle here on the left.
That's a question for Teresa. Teresa, there were 10 transfers this year within the conference, teams from one team in the conference that transferred to another. Do you have any concerns about just the collegiality of the programs, and that when you guys have the most transfers per number of schools of any conference in the country? I think that the SEC has 11 interconference transfers, but they have 14 teams. What are your concerns about that level of transferring within the conference?
Hello, Michelle. I am not concerned about that number. I mean, we looked at the comps just to see if there was anything to be gleaned from that. And I think our numbers are similar to the other A5s in that regard. And honestly, that's a byproduct of the environment that we're in. Like with these new transfer portal opportunities, that's going to happen. And quite candidly, while sometimes it creates difficult challenges among our coaching staffs, we would prefer that those elite level talent stay in our league, right? I would much rather have those 10 student athletes stay in the Pac-12 than to go to another Power 5 conference. We want to try to keep the elite level women's basketball student athletes in our league. So I'm not worried about the numbers. I'm not worried about the trends. And quite candidly, our coaches, they're competitive, they're passionate. They don't want to lose a student athlete from their program, but at the end of the day, they see the big picture. And I think they would also agree that keeping the talent level in the Pac-12 to allow us to maintain our national competitiveness is the priority. So it's not something I'm worried about, Michelle.
Alex?
Yeah, Alex Simon from Bay Area News Group again. For both Rhonda and Lisa. Rhonda, because you were the chair, Lisa, as you're going to be the chair, I would just wonder, from a position where you're trying to view every single women's basketball team in the country, probably as often as you can, how much has the availability of streaming networks, places like ESPN Plus that can have every conference game, you can basically watch them anytime you can, how has that kind of changed the role when you had it, Rhonda, and how much does that, as you get into it, Lisa, kind of shape the role going forward?
I mean, I think it's amazing exposure, and for people who are on the committee, you are trying to watch every team, and to be able to have a Pac-12 network that makes it so easy to watch so many games and so many matchups. I know when I was on the committee, I would basically block off Friday nights and Sunday afternoons and be able to just watch games from the time that they started to the time that they ended. And, I really had a great opportunity that I was the Pac-12 conference monitor for most of my time on the committee. And so I think it's just invaluable to be able to have these opportunities to view games both on linear TV, but also to view them on, digital networks as well.
Yeah, watching games, like I said, if you don't watch games, it's really hard to evaluate the teams because numbers are just numbers, and that's really what matters when you're trying to rank those teams. I like to do it both ways. I like to do where you record the game, like that's happening on television, because I like to hear the announcers sometimes. So for the announcers in the room, you do have an impact. But no, being able to watch the games, having them available, I mean, that's the only way that we can actually do justice to the teams that we're trying to put into the tournament, is to actually see them play.
Got time for two more. We'll start with Cindy right here.
Cindy Brunson, Pac-12 Network. You mentioned the announcers in the room, so I'll throw this right back at you. 132 games available on Pac-12 networks. How many of those will be staffed with play-by-play and analyst? How many will be streamed?
I don't know that I have that answer.
Well, that 132 are all linear broadcasts that are going to be on the Pac-12 network, right? Was part of your question, Cindy, around streaming?
tell these stories like we want to, they need to be staffed with professionals.
Are you talking about the production staff or the talent? I'm not sure I have that answer. We have networks folks in the room, but I'm not sure I have that information, Cindy.
Anything else? No? Great. Thank you, George, Rhonda, Lisa, Teresa. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time this morning. We will begin with our coaches and student athletes at 11 with Utah.